Hey guys, I'm Joe Klemczewski, founder of the Diet Doc, here with Dr. Kevin Brunacini, who is one of our program owners in Independence, Kentucky, which is just the south side of Cincinnati. And appreciate you being here. You're pinch hitting for Corey today, Kevin.
Big shoes to fill. Happy to be here, Joe.
All right. Well, today is actually a holiday, and I wanted to get some content laid down because we're going through a kind of a hodgepodge of different topics, creating some things that I think a lot of people have questions about. We fielded a lot of concerns and questions that people have and decided we're just going to start nailing those things one at a time, Kevin. So we've gone through a lot of things in the last 2 weeks, like water, artificial sweeteners, things like that. And today is our big vitamin day. So I don't know, do you take any vitamins, Kevin?
Not for some time, actually. It's been probably a good 3-4 years that I haven't taken anything purposely.
Okay, now you are a nurse practitioner. You have your doctorate and your master's in nurse practice. And do you base that? I mean, the AMA has switched positions a couple different times. So do you have any professional opinion on why you do or do not, or what you would recommend to people?
It's pretty much you answered it for me. It's, I've gone back and forth with, myself just based on the evidence out there. And of course, it's going to always depend on, medically what is going on for the patient, for the client to warrant the necessity of whatever vitamin that's necessary or they're lacking or not absorbing. So certainly that's going to dictate what's appropriate and necessary. But for me, I would probably retract the only thing I probably should be taking is omega-3 because I don't like seafood of any manner. So I should probably, that would be one I should probably reintroduce just based on that risk factor for me. But even still for those individuals, I feel like fish oil for me has been one I've really done more evidence or more diving into as a vitamin. But the evidence is still rather in between. If you want to, great, but the benefits of a risk reduction, unless you're under a certain population that really needs the cardiovascular protection, there's really no additional cardiovascular protection just by taking a fish oil, for example.
And that's what I want to talk about. I definitely want to go through some meta-analyses that have been done out there. A lot of people have been really jumping on this topic from the NIH, different medical schools, Berkeley, Harvard. I've seen a lot of people. Johns Hopkins has put out a position paper. But I'm going to start anthropologically with you because I really think, and I even threw out this question into our own company's Facebook community where all of our clients converge. I just asked the question before I even launched into this podcast, do you guys take vitamins? I didn't even ask why. I didn't ask for, what they take yet. I'm going to filter down into that. But I really think it kind of depends on what story you believe and how you came to hear that story. So I will tell you that I was a young teenager who got interested in bodybuilding, right? I mean, that's my story. So by the time I was 12 years old, I was already lifting weights aggressively. I was buying the muscle magazines. And of course, those companies are owned by supplement companies, those media outlets. So they're always pimping supplements of some sort. And so, I would cart my allowance down to the health food store, and I was always buying something that would promise me even health benefits. I could see an article on vitamin E, and I'm like, oh, now I got to add vitamin E, and then all of a sudden it's alpha lipoic acid. Oh, I probably need some of that. So it wasn't until I started really looking at the research that I started forming some harder opinions. But I have to say, I'm still that person who wants to think, because I'm pretty type A, that if there's an advantage, if there's a way to get the edge, if there's a way to hack the system, improve your health, and it just makes sense to me. I mean, we're taking these great food sources. Like if I asked you, do you think as a clinician and a healthcare professional, people should eat fruits and vegetables? You would probably say what, Dr. Brunacini?
Of course.
You would say yes.
Of course, more the merrier.
And primarily because that's where we get all of our vitamins and minerals. And so to concentrate them in a form where you can get all the things you would never get otherwise. If I take a multivitamin out of here and I can say, look, this thing has 200 different vitamins and comes from all these different, it's a whole whole food powder source. So I'm getting all of that, then that has to be better. But that's the story I've chosen to believe. The evidence says something else. So here's what's interesting to me, Kevin, and I want to know if you've heard some of these things in the medical community. The supplements are getting hit hard right now. The American Medical Association forever said vitamins are not necessary. Then think about a decade ago, they reversed their position and they said, okay, everybody should probably just take a multivitamin and just leave us alone. Like that's our position. Probably good. But then some studies started coming out showing that, hey, if you take too much beta carotene, you can double your risk of lung cancer and prostate cancer. And we thought that vitamin E protects you from heart disease, but if you take too much, it can actually cause heart disease. We recommended people take a little bit of vitamin C for their immunity, protection against cancer. But if you exceed this amount of vitamin C, all of a sudden we're seeing correlations that it causes cancer. So now all these medical organizations are backing up. They're really doing a lot of big data work, and they're saying, okay, like time out. We don't think you should take anything. So have you seen anything to that effect?
It's interesting. Just as you're discussing all that, I would say when I was in my master's going through nurse practitioner training, the pretty much general stance was, multivitamins is not going to hurt. It's pretty blanket safe in terms of just, that's a general statement to make for everyone. Just take it. They should be on one. But since that time, that's been 2013, I would say that what I've seen is that's really been a slow reversal. And the fact that there's two things I'm focusing on is the necessity of taking multivitamins, safety and all that. Is it really what they state to be in those bottles? That's one issue. But the other thing is, even if it is true, does it help? Is it doing anything? Mm-hmm. And focusing on that it's just inconclusive of, we don't know if it does anything or anything with what they state it's going to be. And it's kind of a hard sell, in my opinion, to just blanket and say, just take it's no harm, when we still know that answer either entirely. So
a couple of different science organizations try to address this. First of all, we had the RDA. Now we have things like the DV that shows up, daily value, right on food labels. We have the upper limit for tolerance. That's another marker that some organizations use. So they've tried to get people away from mega dosing to say, at least we don't want people to risk their health doing that. But we do know, like, even if you look at some of these meta-analyses by Berkeley and Harvard and Johns Hopkins, they'll say, no, don't take anything. We think it's all wrong. It's stupid. You're wasting your money. You're going to hurt yourself. But you definitely still need folic acid if you're pregnant, or you're going to have birth defects, and probably still need some vitamin A if you're in this risk category. And, a lot of people need vitamin D. So as soon as they say, no, don't take anything, then they start taking their list of, hey, and don't forget, we still don't want you to have rickets or scurvy or those things that we left in the 18th century. So to me, there's still a little bit of concern, because almost all of the media outlets now pushing this, they're cycling through the same thing. It's almost like everybody has the same RSS feed, and they're just pimping out the same studies. Like, oh, this meta-analysis said this, so now we're going to go over that direction. But I still think there's room to investigate, but it does appear that there's been this kind of cultural timeout where they're all of a sudden saying, especially for one of the points that you made, is what about toxicity? These are things that are not regulated very well. We know we get heavy metals, arsenic, mercury, things like that from the same soil that some of these vitamins are made from. A lot of contamination has been around. We know that more than 90% of vitamin companies don't have any kind of science staff or lab assay capability. They're just private labeling. So you really, as a consumer, have to at least make sure you're being very safe. So just the things that we're talking about now, you haven't taken vitamins in 3 or 4 years. I've probably convinced you now that you still won't. But what do you say about still trying to find the real answer there?
It's a hard one to answer. I would have to say it's really just going to be dependent on the individual of, even if it's placebo, if they still feel better, then there's nothing, even if it's placebo, they feel better, then fine, so be it. But, as far as a clinician, it's my responsibility to show them, here's what the evidence does show. And that's that. If they want to choose to do that, then that's their choice. But here's what the evidence shows, here's the risk, and based on your clinical presentation, I would suggest this or that, or not this or that. But it's what I find most infuriating within just the industry is just the whole, everyone must be on this, or everyone must be taking this just because it's over the counter, therefore it's safe, when that's just not the case. That's what's very reckless and irresponsible. And it's often done as well, even if it's pharmaceutical grade, where it's a multivitamin. You can't go wrong when it's not a safe prescription to give anyone.
Well, and that's another thing. In some of these big studies, I believe some of these meta-analyses went out 10 years. They covered anywhere from 75,000 to almost 500,000 people. And when they were looking at things like, does vitamin E or C increase your health or decrease your risk, at least, of heart disease or cancer, they would always come back with the answer, no, we're not seeing any evidence of increased protection. But they would say, and that was with, the majority of people took a Centrum Silver multivitamin. It was something that I wouldn't even say is top of the line, a company that probably is not getting the best kind of sourcing. So, as a consumer, first of all, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are getting some trusted sources. So anytime I'm looking for a single vitamin or multivitamin, I'm at least doing that homework. I'm looking for that kind of place that I can trust. They have their lab assays published, and they have a science staff. But I will say, one of the things that I'm really doing now more than ever is looking at smaller doses, because there was a time, probably in my 20s, that I was getting kind of excited, almost fanatical about supplements. I had my own supplement company at the time. And so, hey, if 200 IUs of vitamin E is good, let's take 800. And I was really reading a lot of megadosing kind of sources. And now it's very different. I have a daily vitamin thing like this because I don't want to take the same things all the time. I will do this, Kevin. I'll say, okay, I'm going to take alpha lipoic acid twice a day. Or I'm sorry, not twice a day, twice a week. So I may put those in the Monday and Friday, category. And then if I'm doing something like vitamin E, I'll do that 1 or 2 days. And I really just kind of bounce things around, because I think if I'm going to eat more like we would in nature, it's infrequent amounts, but creating some variety. And that's biologically how the body seems to withdraw nutrients. I mean, we know if you take calcium, for example, every single day, you're only going to absorb so much. You're only going to absorb what your body homeostatically needs at that moment. The rest, now your body has to dispose of, which is where you can get some toxicity issues and elimination issues. But if you don't have something frequently and you give your body a dose of it, then your body's going to absorb more of it, and the receptor sites have a greater affinity. So I remember you brought up fish oil, Kevin, and I remember seeing one study that a single dose of fish oil or fresh fish reduces your risk of Alzheimer's by 91%. That's one study, but it shows substantial protection. But if you did that every single day, or as some people may take EFA capsules at almost every meal, does that give you more protection? It may actually give you worsening health risk because of mercury toxicity or something else.
The dose makes the poison, after all. Yeah, it's a really complicated thing to answer, and I remember being on that boat right after school ended, where I had my daily fill-a-box, and I took my arsenal of multivitamins, and every ancillary supplement that I felt was just necessary. And I can't say I feel any better. Of course, things have, the context is different just due to age, but training goals haven't changed. My body weight's the same since that time, give or take. And I can't say I feel any worse or better. Certainly based on labs, nothing has changed negatively to, if anything, it's improved as far as just a cholesterol panel, but nothing else alarmingly has changed to make me think that those supplements at the time were helping, certainly not hurting, but as far as the benefit I was expecting or hoping, you haven't seen that. And it's probably because when it comes down to it, nutrition is at its core is varied and appropriate in terms of balance and amounts for my goals. And I think that's probably the nature of the whole game for all of us.
Yeah, and that's why I'm certainly glad that I'm not somebody who mega doses things, and I don't take dozens of vitamin supplements every single day. But I do think there is still some value. I'm going to come into that side of the continuum a little bit and say that as long as you're checking for source quality and you're even looking at toxicity things, like we know some things like St. John's wort and vitamin K and ginkgo and things like that can have true drug reactions. You could be taking something like a blood thinner or an SSRI and have a real complication because you're taking something that was just an over-the-counter supplement that you thought was perfectly fine, and it might not be. But I also think that I don't think this is a place where we can just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say vitamins now should never be taken. Obviously, if you're having a good diet, plenty of fruits and vegetables, you're covering yourself there. But for the same reason we started doing that, for the same reason we have an RDA, and even in our penal system, we know that we have to give prisoners a certain amount of nutrition in their food, or they're going to have those health problems. There's certainly a basement that we need to make sure that we're out of. But this is definitely new territory, I think, for the general public to look at doses and maybe even individual vitamins and companies with more scrutiny.
Absolutely. I say if you want to call it argument, was coming from the side of the assumption that they already are eating on a appropriate level and that any other or additional supplementation is necessary. And that's, in my regard, that's where it gets unnecessary and perhaps dangerous. But, you pretty much nailed it on the nose and I would agree that, based on context, it certainly is necessary based on presentation or risk variables that the client or individual may have. And it's a hard thing to answer concretely often at times, just because it just is. It's, things, a lot of overlapping and working parts to find that answer.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly glad there is a large question being looked at, and I'm still going to take high quality, safe supplements, at least as much as I can determine them to be. But like I said, in small amounts, sporadically, infrequently, like we would do in nature. But I really do think, the studies that show, for example, that, coenzyme Q10, good for the brain and heart and things like that. Like, you can't just discount through big data meta-analysis that these things don't have impact or benefit. They truly do. But this is definitely a wave that's crashing across this topic, and it's going to make people look a little deeper and probably, come out with some better standards, some better even just public awareness. But that's going to be my stance. I'm going to continue going high quality, small amounts with some variety. And I have to say, even just for receptor site affinity, there are some weeks I don't take any vitamins. I will just say, okay, for a week I'm not going to do anything because I really do want to bring my body back to a baseline, and then I'll start with that infrequent variety type dosing again.
I guess you've convinced me to get back on my fish oil regimen.
All right. I'll send you my very, very specific planning so you can, we'll see if we can get your blood chemistry even better.
Do it.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kevin Brunacini, the Diet Doc of Independence, Kentucky. And here at the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast, we always love to hear your questions because we're going to cover them in topics like we did today. So thank you guys for watching and listening, and we'll catch you next time.